Vivian personally gave me a $20 bill 3 weeks before her death. She clasped it in my palm with an intensity suggesting a sacred object, as if to a trusted individual. Our gazes locked, and she whispered, "Edmund, when the time arrives, you'll know how to utilize this." I didn't comprehend her words then, but standing in the wood-paneled conference room on Tremont Street, Boston, holding that solitary bill amidst her children's stifled giggles, I grasped something profound. Vivian Hargrove hadn't bequeathed me nothing. She had left me all. The deadliest tool she bestowed was the item disregarded by everyone in that room, a $20 bill with serial number 47. This number would cause the bank manager on Boylston Street to freeze not for its worth, but for what it revealed. To elaborate on the occurrence at that bank, it's essential you grasp my identity and Vivian's background as crucial context. I am Edmund Calloway, aged 58, who spent 26 years as a bank examiner for the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, stationed in the granite structure on Atlantic Avenue, often overlooked by passers-by. My role was to scrutinize financial institutions, identify deceit hidden within their records, a task at which I excelled through patience and meticulousness, eschewing confrontational tactics. 4 years ago, I retired and encountered Vivian. She was 61, a widow, and the pioneer of Hargrove Medical Technologies, a Boston-based firm that developed 2 FDA-approved diagnostic devices used in hospitals across 34 states. Vivian was discreetly wealthy, her wealth not evident at social gatherings. She drove a functional Volvo and frequented a corner store on Newbury Street, where she was still recognized by her first name by the owner. For 6 years, she wore the same winter coat without drawing attention to it. Such was Vivian, a chance acquaintance made in a grief support group in Cambridge. I, having lost my wife of 22 years, Patricia, to a sudden cardiac event 2 years prior, sought solace in this group. Vivian had lost her husband, Robert, 5 years earlier to pancreatic cancer. We found ourselves, 2 adept individuals, unexpectedly unprepared for loneliness, seated together at a circle within a church basement off Mass Avenue. 14 months after our first encounter, we were married in a low-key ceremony at the Charles Hotel in Cambridge, only close friends attending and no public announcements made. Vivian wasn't the typical one. Her offspring, however, presented a different scenario altogether. Danielle, aged 38, held a position in commercial real estate within the Back Bay area, exuding an assuredness that only those untroubled by financial concerns could. She bore her mother's facial structure but lacked her maternal warmth. Upon our initial dinner encounter at a restaurant on Newbury Street, Danielle scrutinized me much like one appraises a vehicle with concealed accident damage, suspiciously, calculatingly, and on the hunt for flaws. Her sibling, Garrett, was 35 and managed a private equity fund from offices in the financial district. He sported expensive watches that many could not afford to own and extended a handshake engineered to convey dominance. While he didn't openly display hostility, Garrett Hargrove was something more insidious, dismissive. To this Garrett Hargrove, I represented an annoyance in the attire of a retired banker, an impediment between him and his inheritance. They maintained a cordial relationship during family gatherings, and professionally, reminiscent of how lawyers behave towards opposing counsel before a deposition. Each interaction with either of them felt like an unspoken negotiation I hadn't consented to participate in. Vivienne was well aware of her children's true nature. We frequently discussed it late into the night in her Beacon Hill townhouse study, with her legs tucked beneath her on the sofa and her reading glasses perched on her forehead. She deeply loved them without any reservations, and she wasn't oblivious to their flaws. Danielle discovered that wealth is a protective barrier. She told me this once. She constructed hers from mine and neglected to build anything beneath it. She paused before saying, "Garrett is more intelligent but not more discerning. He grasps money but not people." Once, I inquired about her concerns for the future when she was no longer present. She smiled in response. "I worry about what will happen when I'm gone, but I have faith that they can handle it." Her distinctive smile, hinting at her being 12 paces ahead in the conversation. "I've taken care of it," she stated. "You'll merely have to trust me." For those observing this scene and having been in the role of a secondary spouse in an affluent family, you are aware of the particular solitude that accompanies such a position. You're seldom truly part of the family. Instead, you are the extra person, the plus one in a tale that began before your arrival and persists in the thoughts of everyone after your episode concludes. I had no false assumptions about my role. I wasn't marrying Vivienne for her wealth. I possessed my pension, the apartment in Brookline, sufficient resources. I married her because she was the first person since Patricia who made me feel significant beyond mere ambient noise in a room. What surprised me was the depth of affection I developed for her. Not cautiously, not with calculated affection of two older individuals settling down sensibly. Authentically. Totally. In your love for someone, their absence rearranges every space you occupy. 14 months into our matrimony, Vivienne was diagnosed with an aggressive lymphoma. As we sat in the oncologist's office at Massachusetts General Hospital on Fruit Street, she questioned matters I wouldn't have contemplated. She exhibited a clinical and direct demeanor, jotting down notes on a yellow legal pad as if in a business meeting. The doctor regarded her with the unique professional regard doctors bestow upon patients who maintain their composure in their offices. For much of the ride home along Storrow Drive, watching the river, she remained silent. Eventually, she said, "There are things I need to sort out." I offered assistance. She grasped my hand without looking at me. "I understand," she replied. "That's why I chose you as my husband." The subsequent 8 months were the most challenging and truthful of my existence. Vivienne commenced collaborating intimately with her attorney, Sandra Ockhaffer, a diligent and detail-oriented woman stationed on Franklin Street within the financial district. Subsequently, she also engaged in extended periods in her study, surrounded by documents I was never privy to, which I acknowledged wholeheartedly as her private affairs. 3 weeks before her demise, she summoned me into her study one morning. Seated behind her desk, instead of her customary sofa position, she displayed a sense of formality that immediately struck me. On the desk lay a small envelope and a legal pad adorned with handwritten notes. "Edmund," she said, her voice steady, reflecting the strength of those who can sound unyielding when conveying something deeply challenging. "I must share something with you, and I require your trust that I have given this matter due consideration." She extended the envelope towards me. I traversed the room to receive it. In the room was a solitary $20 note. The serial number of that particular bill ended in 47, she told me. "You must recall that," I replied. 47, I repeated when asked. "In due course you will take that bill to the Boylston Street Division of First Colonial Bank," she instructed. "Make sure it's that specific branch and not any other. You'll request an audience with the branch manager named Thomas Weller. Hand him the bill and tell him the number. He'll understand what needs to be done." I didn't press for explanations, instead choosing faith in her guidance. She studied me for a while. "They won't treat you kindly," she warned. At the gathering, Danielle and Garrett were present. "They will believe they have triumphed." "Allow them to think so, for as long as is necessary until you reach that bank." I nodded in agreement. "I vow not to respond impulsively," I pledged. She eased back in her seat. There was a sense of relief, as if she had deposited a heavy burden at its intended destination. "Good," she confirmed. "Sit down with me now. This tale might resonate with you if you've ever experienced being undervalued by someone who should have recognized your worth, or sat in a setting where others presumed nothing of you due to their own misconceptions about your capabilities. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. Give it a like and share your personal stories about instances when people underestimated you, as our community thrives on such narratives, tales in which the seemingly quiet individuals prove to be the most prepared ones in the room. Let me recount what took place at Vivienne's will reading. On a Thursday morning in October, Vivienne passed away at her Beacon Hill townhouse, in her bedroom with the windows slightly open because she cherished the street noise. I was present during her final moments, holding her hand until the end. I shared details about my walk along the esplanade earlier that day, the geese near the river, and the beautiful light filtering through the trees with her. I'm unsure if she listened. I choose to assume she did. The will reading was set for 2 weeks hence at Sandra Ockhaffer's offices on Franklin Street. Specifically, the 11th floor conference room offering a panoramic view of the financial district. I turned up early, clad in my trusty dark blue suit, worn during board examinations for 2 decades. Conservative and fitting, nothing ostentatious. Danielle followed, dressed in a cream-colored blazer that exuded a calm poise likely painstakingly assembled. She gave me a frosty nod. Garrett was the last to arrive, jacket unfastened, displaying a calculated tardiness often employed by influential men to emphasize their significance. Once glanced at me not fully but nearly contemptuously, an expression that was close enough for my purposes. Sandra Ockhaffer occupied the chair at the head of the table. Her aide distributed papers at each place setting, glasses of water, legal pads, everything perfectly in order, impeccably professional. "To commence," Sandra said, using her customary quiet yet authoritative tone. "Mrs. Hargrove was one of the most detail-oriented individuals I've collaborated with professionally. Each aspect of this document mirrors her explicit, deliberate plans. I request everyone to allow me to read it entirely before commenting." Garrett slouched in his chair, the demeanor of a man already foreseeing the decision of this gathering. Sandra commenced reading. Hargrove Medical Technologies shares transferred to a charitable trust overseen by the board, with Danielle and Garrett each granted a position. The Beacon Hill townhouse for Danielle entirely. The investment portfolios. In Newton and on Cape Cod, their real estate holdings and private equity positions totaled approximately $47 million. This wealth was divided between Danielle and Garrett, amounting to $18.5 million each after taxes and charitable donations. As the figures were announced, Danielle subtly tightened her jaw, while Garrett maintained a neutral expression. They had likely discussed this division with their lawyers already. Then Sandra glanced at the document and declared, "To my late husband, Edmund Calloway, I leave $20. There was an unusually long silence in the room before Danielle uttered a sound, not quite a laugh, but a smile-infused breath meant to be contained when one is attempting to uphold dignity. Garrett remained silent, though his mouth corners twitched. This reaction conveyed enough. I kept still. Sandra looked at me, and I noticed an emotion in her eyes that was not merely surprise. Professional caution masked a hidden knowledge in her demeanor, a person who seemed to possess information yet unshared by the room. She extracted from the folder a small envelope and moved it towards me. Upon opening it, I found the same $20 bill that Vivian had given me 3 weeks prior to her demise. I pocketed it within my coat. "Is there more?" Garrett inquired, his tone suggesting the calculation of tax implications for $18.5 million. "One supplementary detail," Sandra replied. A personal note from Mrs. Hargrove intended for her husband was the additional information. "I am not obligated to read this aloud," Sandra explained. "Mr. Calloway, this is meant for your private perusal." She pushed another sealed envelope across the table, which I also pocketed without opening it. Danielle stood up. "I believe we have concluded our business." Her gaze held a sentiment that progressed from resentment to sympathy towards me. "Edmund, please understand there are no ill feelings regarding the townhouse. Understood that you're relocating to Brookline. I'll coordinate the schedule with your office." She seemed surprised by this response. As I left, Sandra held onto my hand a moment longer than usual. "Take care, Edmund," she said. I replied, "Thank you, Sandra, for everything." Later that day, I visited the Boylston Street branch of First Colonial Bank. This historic building features marble floors and an ornate ceiling, symbolizing the significance of wealth. The lobby was bustling with customers on a Thursday, some at the teller windows, others conversing softly about mortgages near the desks. Inquiring if Thomas Weller was available, I said I wasn't sure if he expected me, but requested him to see a client of Vivian Hargrove's. She made a call, waited, then looked up at me. "He'll be with you shortly, Mr. Calloway." Thomas Weller emerged after 2 minutes. Edmund Calloway found himself facing him. In his mid-50s with graying temples, Weller carried an air of a career spent trivializing the significant. He offered a firm handshake, scrutinizing me in return as if verifying a preconceived expectation. "Mr. Calloway," he stated, inviting me to his office. We sat on opposite sides of a tidy desk, a family photo on a Cape Cod beach adorning it, the public garden visible through the window. I delved into my coat and placed a $20 bill on the table between us. "The last 4 digits are 47, I informed him. Thomas Weller took the note, examining the serial number with a frozen stillness, neither terrified nor astonished. Rather, he seemed to recollect an old melody, every single note resonating within him. He pulled out a folder marked with Vivian's handwriting from his desk drawer, bearing my name. "Mrs. Hargrove initiated this account 11 months ago, he said in a low, clear tone. She was meticulous about procedures. No one was allowed to examine or discuss its details except when prompted by the serial number. It's crucial you grasp, Mr. Calloway, that we adhere to those instructions rigorously." He moved the folder toward me. I opened it. The contents included an account statement, a letter, and a document from Sandra Alcaffer's office. The account statement showed a private trust fund opened 11 months back in my name solely. The balance stood at $4.2 million. I read the figure thrice, still not fully convinced. I placed the statement aside and picked up the letter instead. Vivian's penmanship mirrored the neat, upright letters I'd encountered on kitchen counter notes, birthday cards, and her study's legal pad margins. Edmund, I've pondered over this for a while and wish to make it clear, not just about what I've done, but why. Danielle and Garrett are my offspring, and I unconditionally adore them. I have bestowed substantial assets upon them, ones that could benefit them if utilized sensibly. I harbor no regrets about their inheritance. However, you are my spouse, and during our shared time, you've given me something I didn't realize I could still receive: genuine camaraderie, devoid of ulterior motives, unfettered by expectations, and untouched by pretenses. All that was required was your authentic wish to be with me. I am aware of my children's views on you. I know they have never regarded you with gravity. Please comprehend that this lack of seriousness has never stemmed from who you are. The reason is their inherent nature, which involves judging others based on a standard they created for self-preservation. The trust was set up privately and independent of my estate, thus avoiding probate, hidden from other beneficiaries, and exclusively yours. Sandra holds the legal documents, while Thomas manages it with his customary discretion. The $20 bill served as a coded message meant only for you to decipher. I wanted you to possess something in that room that they couldn't comprehend, something that appeared worthless yet held immense value. You remained unmoved in that room, and I knew you would. Among all the people I have encountered, you are the most dignified. I am forever thankful our lives intersected in a church basement on a Tuesday night when we both believed our best days were over. It wasn't, Edmund, not for an instant. With all my love, Vivian. After finishing the letter, I spent a considerable amount of time in Thomas Weller's office in quiet reflection. He silently filled 2 glasses with water as I was engrossed in reading, placing them on the desk without uttering a word. A thoughtful, tactful gesture characteristic of skilled and decent individuals during tough times. "Are you okay, Mr. Calloway?" he inquired. "Yes," I replied. And then, because it was accurate and because Vivian would have valued the detail, I hadn't been this good in a long while, he subtly smiled. Vivian was an exceptional woman. She truly was, I concurred. He guided me through the financial details, access protocols, and investment strategy that Vivian had meticulously set up with her advisors. She had been thorough. She had been preparing this for almost a year, discreetly, alongside her illness, alongside her will arrangements, alongside all the things that Danielle and Garrett were monitoring closely while the hidden details were being put in place. She knew her children would have attorneys scrutinize every aspect of the estate. She anticipated they would expect everything from her. Instead, she ensured the unexpected remained out of their notice. Upon departing the bank, I paused on Boylston Street momentarily. The afternoon light bathed the shopfronts in low, golden hues, a characteristic of Boston in October when the air is crisp and clean, and the leaves lining the common have turned vibrant. Passers-by carried coffee cups, glanced at their phones, moving toward their destinations. I reached into my jacket pocket and touched Vivian's letter hidden within. I contemplated dialing someone. There was no one I felt compelled to contact. Instead, I headed towards the public garden, a route Vivian and I often took on Sunday afternoons, entering through the gate near Arlington Street, passing the lagoon, and observing the barren trees reflected in the water. We cherished a specific bench there, though it wasn't ours by designation, as we had spent enough occasions there to begin thinking of it as such. I spent some time reflecting under the October sun, contemplating Vivian Hargrove's unique brand of intelligence, not the type that constructs corporations or manages investments, although she possessed that as well. Rather, the profound intelligence that perceives people, navigates social situations, and discerns which struggles merit open confrontation and which are settled privately before they even reach a boiling point. What she bestowed upon me was something irreplaceable, not merely the money, but the certainty that the woman I had cherished saw me truly and fully trusted me. Garrett contacted me on Monday as anticipated. I assume Vivian had anticipated it too. His tone was businesslike, composed, the voice of a man who has rehearsed such calls many times. "Edmund, let's ensure we are aligned regarding the timeline for the townhouse transition. You mentioned your intent to vacate by December 1st for the renovation work starting in February, which Danielle appreciates. Also, there's something else I wanted to discuss. Both Danielle and I feel that the reading experience was challenging for everyone involved, and we want to ensure there are no lingering hard feelings on your part. After some thought, I believe it's important to clarify that Vivian's plan wasn't driven by revenge. Instead, it aimed to correct a situation. This distinction is significant because revenge focuses on the other person, while her actions were primarily about ensuring my well-being and stability after she leaves. She wasn't intentionally hurting Danielle and Garrett. Instead, she was safeguarding me from feeling vulnerable in a world that had repeatedly signaled over the previous months that I didn't truly fit in. That difference is significant to me. This is why I could genuinely tell Garrett there were no lingering resentments. I want to share with you the story of the time I activated Vivian's account, as it carries importance beyond its monetary value. Thomas Weller guided me through the procedure of legitimizing my access, modifying the account information, and examining the investment portfolios. Vivian had been prudent yet shrewd with her money. The funds were distributed among municipal bonds and index investments, offering a stable, low-key expansion similar to her own character. After completing the paperwork, Thomas closed the folder and addressed me. "She came in herself to set this up." He wanted me to know that. She had been sitting where you're sitting around 11 months ago. She shared her struggles with certain health issues, yet remained vague about specifics. What she did disclose, however, was a concern that the individual who had brought happiness to the last year of her life should be well taken care of. She mentioned that this person wouldn't ask for anything, which is why she felt compelled to offer help without being asked. I noticed the family photograph on his desk, capturing his family at the Cape, children laughing, and the ocean as a backdrop. "I appreciate you sharing that with me," I replied. I left the Beacon Hill townhouse 4 days early on November 28th, taking only a few belongings. Furniture previously mine prior to marriage, books specifically bequeathed from the study during Vivian's personal property addendum, her reading glasses, which Danielle granted me upon my request, and presented in a small velvet box, sparking thoughts about Danielle being more complex than initially perceived. I returned to the Brookline apartment, spending 2 weeks sifting through boxes and readjusting to independent living. The apartment was repainted, a new reading chair was purchased for the corner by the window, and lunch was enjoyed with an ex-colleague from the Federal Reserve, now 2 years into retirement and discovering the purpose of his new life. I, too, understood this feeling. In January, I met with a financial advisor to review the trust's terms. For 2 hours, we discussed a long-term plan, focusing on my vision for the utilization of funds. One point was unequivocally clear. I wanted to allocate a segment of it to establish an enduring venture bearing Vivian's name. We agreed on a fellowship program in collaboration with a nonprofit where Vivian had served on the board for 12 years, an institution in Roxbury that offers business mentorship and initial funding to first-generation entrepreneurs. The fellowship came to be known as the Vivian Hargrove Fellowship, granting mentorship to 12 individuals annually, access to networks, and a $25,000 seed fund. Upon discussing the legal framework with Sandra Ockhaffer, she fell silent after I outlined my idea. "She would appreciate it," she remarked. "I know," I responded. "That's why I am doing it." In the ensuing months, I pondered over what lessons I derived from this experience, not just from the money, although its significance should not be underestimated, but primarily from Vivian herself. She imparted a lesson on the disparity between visibility and impact, teaching me that the most potent expressions of affection are frequently unseen. She demonstrated this through instances like the seemingly insignificant $20 bill, the untouched account enduring for 11 months. The completed plan before its intended venue was even prepared. This woman grasped that true might does not declare itself. It merely materializes when needed. For 26 years, I had been a bank auditor, and my profession instilled one unyielding belief. The vital aspects are seldom apparent on the surface. The deception that brings down an institution was never in the obvious area that was scrutinized. The resilience that preserves one was usually rooted in the quiet, anticipatory work of those who comprehended the actual hazards. Vivian embodied this understanding regarding finances, families, and love. Recently, I revisited the bereavement support group in Cambridge. I'm not in crisis, but a friend who recently lost his wife asked if I could accompany him. We found ourselves in the same circle, the same church basement off Mass Avenue, surrounded by different people, yet a familiar quiet pain that leads people to gather in folding chairs in church basements on Tuesday nights. I didn't share the whole story, but when it was my turn to speak, I expressed thoughts I've been pondering since October. I shared that the person you mourn is not just the one who's departed. They are also the aspect of yourself that existed alongside them. The task of grieving, the real work, lies in discovering who you are now, as that version of you no longer has the person who shaped your existence. I stated that sometimes, the person lost had planned for this not because they knew the solution, but because they understood you well enough to know you would seek it. The man next to me gave a slow nod, as if acknowledging something he'd been trying to express for months. Following the meeting, we stepped outside into the frosty Cambridge air, pausing on the sidewalk for a brief moment. He inquired about how long it had been for me. "A tad over a year," I replied. "Does it improve?" he asked. "It alters," I said. "It changes, and change proves to be something you can develop." He pondered this thought. "That's actually insightful," he commented. "I had a competent instructor," I mentioned. Vivian's reading glasses are on the table beside my reading chair in the Brookline apartment. I don't need them. My prescription is different. Yet they remain, resting in the small velvet case Danielle presented to me in the Beacon Hill townhouse hallway on the last day I was there. A tiny, tangible item. Every morning, I prepare coffee at my kitchen counter, the October light streaming through the window as it did that morning when I sat in Thomas Weller's office and rechecked the account balance for the third time before accepting it as true. I think of Vivian. I mull over the $20 bill she slipped into my grasp with both hands and the expression on her face, confident yet playful and utterly tranquil about her actions. I ponder the fact that she orchestrated everything while dealing with a terminal prognosis. While meeting with lawyers, setting up private trusts, selecting a Boylston Street branch and manager named Thomas Weller, and outlining a plan connected to a serial number. She made all these arrangements as she was succumbing to her illness, so I would be well-positioned once she was no more. If that's not the embodiment of love, patient, meticulous, and entirely focused on another, then I am unaware of what it truly signifies. There are events that life presents us with that we cannot pick. The losses, the diagnoses, the spaces where people presume we have little because they deem us as worthless. We don't get to select those spaces. The choice lies in what we take with us as we enter such places. I stepped into the Franklin Street conference room with a $20 bill in my coat pocket and the vow to the woman I cherished not to respond. I honored that vow. Then I drove to Boylston Street, entered a bank with marble floors, laid a bill on a desk, and watched the branch manager freeze in place. Not due to the bill's value, but because of what the woman who'd given it to me had discerned within me that I hadn't yet fully recognized myself. That tale is about the $20 Vivian Hargrove passed on to me. The rest, the fellowship, the refurbished apartment, Tuesday nights in Cambridge, the October light through the kitchen window is a narrative I'm still crafting. I anticipate it will be an excellent one. She intended it to be so. I yearn to return to something, as I believe its significance surpasses what I've acknowledged. Following the reading of the will, prior to my visit to the bank, I made an effort to be truthful with myself about my true emotions. The reality was humiliating. To put it bluntly, I felt deeply disrespected. Although the narrative, the silent spouse, the intelligent partner, the unfolding scheme may give the impression that I was unscathed, this is far from the truth. Danielle's muted laughter and Garrett's faint smile didn't slide off me because I stood on a pedestal of superiority. Instead, I sat in a chair on Tremont Street, witnessing two individuals communicate with utter transparency that they had never once entertained the notion that I was deserving of their consideration. Enduring such underestimation from people you've dined and celebrated holidays with, watched their children unwrap Christmas presents, it's a unique pain that doesn't respond to anticipation. What sustained me wasn't the awareness that Vivian had orchestrated something. I entered that room adhering to a pledge I had given to the woman I cherish, ensuring those individuals would not savor my reaction. That vow sufficed. Money was irrelevant, the letter held significance. Vivian, with her insightful comprehension of what I required, which wasn't money but proof of being truly recognized, used the account as a means to express this. "I see you," it stated. "I have always seen you." Here is the verification, in the sole tongue that an establishment on Boylston Street can authenticate. She had intended it thus. If this tale resonated with you, if it served as a reminder that those who love us may act on our behalf in ways we are unaware of, share it with someone in need of hearing it. Leave your thoughts below. I read each one. Subscribe if you haven't, for there are more tales like this one, about ordinary individuals who proved to be as extraordinary as those who believed in them. Until our next encounter, bear in mind that sometimes, seemingly nothing may actually encompass everything, and those who grasp this concept often pondered your existence well before it crossed your awareness.